Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Small and Rural Library Forum. We have regularly scheduled these kind of virtual meetups that are very low key and casual. If you want to put your camera on, you can. If you want to listen, we meet you wherever you're at, so wherever you're comfortable with today. The Small and Rural Library Forum is a group that is part of the Illinois Library Association, and anybody can come to any of the events. They can be involved in the forum discussions on the Google groups. They can join the Facebook page. I will add links to all of those things as we move along. But I just wanted to just share that this is the meetings that we have. This is where we come together and decide what topics do we want to talk about? What do we want to hear more about? And so the committee, the forum group, often comes up with things like different resources, how to handle different things. And then all of these are recorded and put on the Small and Rural Library Forum website. So you can go back and access them at any time. There's contact information a lot of times in the recording. So if you need to follow up. Today, we are talking about the Sun Meals to Go. And so I'm bringing to you Trina and Brianna. And I will let them introduce themselves to you. If you have questions along the way, feel free to connect with them in the chat. Unmute yourself, come on camera. We really try to make this as casual and networky, and learning a lot about the great resources that they have available. So welcome, Trina and Brianna, and I will stop sharing and let you introduce yourselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. Are you able to see my slides?
We are. They look great.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to be here with you today. My name is Trina Ragain. I am the Child Nutrition Lead for the Illinois State Board of Education's Nutrition Department. I'll also say that I'm growing up in a small town in Illinois myself. I'm a self-professed library kid. And so this is definitely a group that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm really excited to be here with you today to share more information about summer meals.
Thanks, Trina. Hi, everyone. I'm Bri Guerrero, a state campaign manager with the No Kid Hungry campaign. I'm so grateful for you all taking time today to listen to what Trina and I have to say. I'm very excited to talk to you about summer meals and a couple other opportunities that are happening this summer. No Kid Hungry is a national campaign working to end childhood hunger. And for the last 2 summers, we've really been prioritizing summer meals expansion in rural areas. As many of you know, rural areas have a really high need during the summer, as a lot of kids are far away from their schools, and maybe have a lot less access to those school meals that they typically rely on. So great to see everyone, and I'll hand it back to Trina.
Thank you, Bri. So just a little bit of an overview of the agenda for today. So we'll try and convince you why libraries are a great place to host summer meals, and talk about the benefits for your library. We'll try and ground what we're telling you in a little bit of data about this state. And then we'll provide you an overview of the different summer meals programs that are available for your community. And of course, Bri is going to provide us with information that she sees from across our state and other states in terms of the amazing work that libraries are doing to address nutrition and child hunger in the summers. And then we'll also leave time to have some question and answers with you. So in terms of why this is a perfect summer meal location, as I mentioned, I was spent most of my summer at the local library growing up. I don't know about you, Bri, but I was able to earn my personal Pizza Hut pan pizza every summer with the Book It program. So very proud of that. And so they are just widely accessible to the public. In a lot of communities, The library is an essential hub. I think we saw that more than ever during the COVID pandemic. Libraries really stepped up to the plate in being a location that communities could rely on for resources. I heard someone, they said, oh, the libraries are a great place to get free stuff. And I think that's become true now more than ever. It's not just about books anymore in many libraries. Most libraries are already doing programs specific to children's and teens, so it's really well aligned with the summer meals program. And what better combination than pairing reading in the summer with nutrition? It helps kids hit what I call their summer stride, and really helps combat learning loss. We know children that come from low-income households are more likely to fall behind their peers, their middle and upper class peers in the summer months. And so we just love that libraries are a great place for them to continue reading and exercising their mind, as well as getting the nutrition they need to fuel that. And of course, it offers a great, safe, climate-controlled environment for kids in those hot months. In terms of the potential benefits to libraries, this is a great way to attract new patrons to your libraries by offering a new service. It is expanding the resources you already have available by offering a federally reimbursable meal program on top of all the great things you're already doing in your community. It may create new opportunities for you to partner with schools and community organizations in your community, and it can help increase your visibility as a resource in the community. So I did a little math before we got started today. I used my calculator, but we know from the data that 1.15 million students in the state of Illinois rely on free and reduced price school meals during the school year. 1.15 million children. We also know, based on the data we have from last summer, that across the entire state, summer sites, meal sites served 4.9 million meals. So I did a little math. So conservatively, I thought, okay, a summer break could be 10 weeks. That's 10 weeks, 5 days a week, that kids aren't getting that school breakfast and that school lunch. So that's 50 days conservatively over the course of the summer, 2 meals a day. That's 100 meals that each child that relies on free and reduced price meals is losing access to during the summer. And the wonderful thing about Sun Meals that we're going to talk about, this is our opportunity to make sure that nutrition exists in their life. So if we take 1.15 million kids missing 100 meals over the course of your average summer, we are short, or we need to serve 115 million meals this summer in Illinois to make sure that kids are getting the nutrition they need. So that means, based on the amount of meals we served in this state last year, we're coming up short about 110 million meals. And that's a lot. When we look at rural areas in particular, we're reaching less than 7% of children who could benefit from these services. 110 million meals is a Herculean task, and it's going to take more than schools. It's going to take more than community groups. It's going to take it takes a village to make sure that kids are getting fed this summer. And so today we're going to tell you about the USDA programs that exist to fill this gap. There's 3 programs, and I just want to do a little terminology check before we get started, because there's a lot of terminology, as I'm sure you guys know, that comes with any federal program. And so the USDA is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And the technical name for this program is as the Summer Food Service Program. Those of us who work in it lovingly refer to it as SFSP. But if we're talking about it having a brand, last summer the USDA rebranded it for communities to the Sun programs. So we have Sun Meals to Go, which Kristen mentioned in her opening, and we also have Sun Bucks. We're going to do a quick rundown of all of those programs, how they can work together in your community, and get into a little bit of more of the specifics. So Sun Meals is the traditional summer meals program. It was started in the year 1968, so it's been around for quite a while. You might hear this referred to as SFSP, sun meals, congregate meals, just summer meals. It has a lot of terms it goes by. I always think that uh, there are cultures where like the more words you have to like describe something, the more it's loved. So I'm gonna apply that to summer meals here. We love summer meals in the US. So it was created to ensure that low-income children have access to nutritious meals during the summer when those school meals aren't available. This model is available, or this program is available to any child ages essentially up through the age of 18. They can show up at the advertised meal time at an approved location and receive a meal. They're required to eat that meal on site. They are not allowed to take it with them. That's where we get the term congregate. They have to essentially be present and eat the meal there at the site. Um, these sites can operate as open or closed. We're really thinking of libraries and looking at open sites. This means that based on the number of children or the percentage of children in your community eligible for free and reduced price meals, looking at either school data or census data, at least half of kids meet that qualification. And if that's the case, your library could serve as an open site, meaning you don't have to collect any sort of eligibility information on the children. They can simply come in and receive a meal from you. And so there are resources available to help you determine if you are in an area that's considered, the term is area eligible. There is a map for that, and we are happy to share that link with you. And we just want to say, I think Bree and I both agree, if this sounds complicated to you and a lot to take on, we're here to help you. It can be really simple. And so we're happy to help you figure out if your library location qualifies and to help you through the steps of becoming a summer meals site. Um, the meals, when they're in this congregate traditional format, can be served Monday through Friday in Illinois. You can offer up to 2 meals a day, and there are certain iterations to that. You can offer a breakfast and a lunch, or a breakfast and a supper, or you can throw in a snack there. You just can't do lunch and supper in the same day. So essentially what happens is you offer these meals, you count the number of meals. The meals have to be created according to a meal pattern that is provided by the USDA. It is not a super complicated pattern, but if your meals meet that pattern, you can then request reimbursement for the meals. And I see, Jackie, that you asked a question about, are we preparing the food? That's up to you. I don't know if your library is up for preparing food, but you will have the option to either what we call self-prep, meaning you are prepping those meals, or you can do something called a vended meal, which is essentially means that you are getting those meals from someone else. It could be a company that prepares them to meet those meal pattern requirements. It could be a local, I know folks who work with local schools. So the school food service creates those meals. Maybe you have a caterer in town who also does things like meals for aging populations, like Meals on Wheels. They might be familiar with meal patterns and be able to partner with you. So there are a variety of options on how those meals can be prepared or can be purchased for you to use. And in terms of refrigeration, Angelina, that is up to you. Of course, there are meals that require refrigeration, those that have, perishable components to them, like milk, or maybe have meat or cheese or dairy in them. However, there are also options to do shelf-stable meals, and that uses things like shelf-stable milk, so you wouldn't need to have refrigeration available. So the second kind of meal is the sun meals to go. And this is relatively new. You might also hear it referred to as rural non-congregate uh, or sun meals to go, but it became permanent and available to communities beginning in 2023. And this program, as the name says, you have to be in an area that's designated as rural by the USDA. there's a mapping tool for that as well. It's called the USDA Rural Designation Map. And we, again, can provide a link to that, as well as we're happy to help you take a look at that to see if your library address qualifies. No Kid Hungry also has created some great tools that kind of combine the area eligibility and the rural mapper so that you can kind of look at everything in one map instead of having two separate steps to that process. If your library qualifies as rural and it meets that area eligibility designation, meaning 50% or more of your kids are living at 185% of federal poverty or below, you can offer Sun Meals to Go. And I love this program, and Bree and I are so excited to talk to communities about starting to offer this program. So I mentioned that with the other type of meals, just regular Sun Meals, kids have to show up, eat one meal on site, and they have to come back for every meal service. Sun Meals to Go is non-congregate, and that means that you are able to send home with kids up to 10 days worth of meals per distribution throughout the entire course of the summer. That's 10 breakfasts, up to 10 breakfasts and up to 10 lunches every time you hold a distribution. And those meals can be distributed through a pickup at the library, a drive-through that you set up where you're just putting those meals um, in cars, or you can do a home delivery. So you have a lot of options, and this is great for rural areas, especially if you find that your families are experiencing transportation difficulties, and it might be too difficult for them to get to the library or get to a meal site on a daily basis. This means that once a week, once every 10 days, they can show up and get those meals for their kids. And another perk of this program is that you can also serve meals for Saturdays and Sundays. So you can send home with those kids meals to cover breakfast and lunch on Saturday and Sunday as well, as long as they are distributed before 4 p.m. on a Friday. That's just one of those little asterisks that goes along with the regulations. So literally, you can provide 7 days of meals for kids in your community. You can also implement Sun Meals to Go as part of a hybrid program. And let me explain a little bit what that means. Say you hold a children's program at noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays in your library. On Tuesday, when kids show up for that program, you can serve a meal, serve a lunch, a reimbursable lunch during that program. However, you could also send them home with breakfast and lunch for Wednesday and breakfast for Thursday. And then when they come back to the library for the program on Thursdays, you could again serve them a meal during that program and then send them home with those breakfasts and lunches all the way through until they're back at your library the next week. So that's a great option. And as an open site, not only would that be available to the kids that are participating in your program, but it would be open to all the kids in your community. So it's a great way to make sure that we're helping to increase those meals that are available in your community. All right. And so the final option is called Summer EBT or Sun Bucks. And you may have heard about this. Illinois has been implementing it since it was allowed in 2023. States are eligible to opt in to this program. And what it does is, if you're familiar, let me just define EBT, if you're not familiar, is electronic benefit transfer. And so you may be most familiar with EBT as part of the SNAP program. When people get food stamps or SNAP in our country, those benefits come loaded onto a card that they can use at the grocery store. And so summer EBT is specific for school-aged children, and essentially children that qualify for free and reduced price meals are eligible to receive an EBT card that contains $120 per child. And that's to help offset the cost of groceries during those summer months when those school meals aren't available. And that can be used in conjunction with attending a Sun Meals or Sun Meals to Go location. And so it's just another way to ensure that kids have access to good nutrition during the summer. This program is administered by the Illinois Department of Human Services here in the state of Illinois. and they will automatically send that benefit to any child that is already in their computer system for receiving SNAP, temporary assistance to needy families, or is enrolled in receiving health care through the Children's Medicaid program. So for the vast majority of children in our state, they will automatically receive this $120 benefit. Right now, it's looking like potentially we can expect those benefits around early July. And so that's just a quick overview of each of the different components that make up the SUN programs. And so I want to just kind of get down into the nitty-gritty a little bit with you about how you can offer summer meals in your community. So you have a couple options. You can become an SFSP, that's the Summer Food Service Program sponsor, and host your own meal site. If you're a sponsor, you could also host other sites in your community. If you are not interested in being a sponsor, you could essentially partner with an existing SFSP sponsor and open your library up as a meal site, as a meal location. That takes some of the administrative burden off you while still allowing you to help feed the children in your community through these programs. And maybe this just isn't in the cards for you and your library this summer. It's something that you want to plan for in the future. And if that's the case, I would still encourage you to help promote the SUN meals in your community this summer. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that. So the nitty-gritty of being an SFSP sponsor, as I said, you are responsible for administering the program. You apply to the Illinois State Board of Education to become a sponsor. There's an application on our website. Once that's approved, you would be required to complete the state trainings as a sponsor. You would hire, train, or supervise staff or volunteers who are going to oversee administration of that program. You would arrange meal prep and delivery. So getting back to some of those earlier questions, right? You would figure out what kind of meals you're going to serve to meet those meal patterns, who you're going to work with, whether it's a school or a vendor, and figure out how you're going to get them delivered, whether it's to your library or other sites. You would have to submit to ISB claims for reimbursement. And so the different meals, as long as they meet those meal patterns, are reimbursable at different rates, whether it's a breakfast, a lunch, or a supper, or a snack. And of course, you'd want to promote those locations within your community. So that's just a really quick overview of what a sponsor's responsibilities look like. I mean, and if you would prefer to just be a meal site under an existing sponsor, you would attend a site training that would be provided by your sponsoring organization. You would be responsible for supervising that meal service that happens in your library. You guys are already asking questions about refrigeration. You would need to essentially follow safety guidelines for storing and distributing food if you're dealing with perishable meals versus shelf-stable meals. You would track the number of meals that you're serving. And of course, you'd want to assist with promoting that program as well. If that seems like a little too much to take on this summer, I would encourage you to partner and promote SUN programs in your community. You can work with those existing sponsors to promote the existing locations to your library patrons. You can partner with the local school district if they are often a sponsor in many communities. In some cases, there's great examples of libraries partnering with schools or community groups who are offering meals to go ahead to add a library program or a reading program to that effort. And there's also ways that you can assist your community members with making sure that if they're eligible, they're receiving that $120 SUN bucks. Libraries are a great place. We'll know when those benefits are dispersed. And then we anticipate there will be thousands of children that their parents will need to apply for those benefits that don't show up on any of those existing rosters. And so essentially, libraries are a great place to check to see if someone's eligible and then to get help filling out that online application so that they can get those benefits sent to them. All right, there's a few questions. And we can talk about these. All right, these are great. Jackie, if you don't mind, we're going to hold these to the end because they are perfect, like you said, for Q&A. And I'm going to hand it over to Brianna at this point.
Thank you, Trina. That was a really wonderful overview of all the options for summer feeding across the country, but especially in Illinois. I'm going to talk just briefly about library sites in Illinois for some context and then give some examples outside of the state, which can sometimes be helpful, but not always. So the vast majority of library sites in Illinois work with a larger sponsor so that they have less of an administrative burden. Trina talked about, being a sponsor and what that all entails. And then she mentioned being a site. So the vast majority, I think actually all of the library sites in Illinois are sites and not sponsors. But that's not the case in every state. It definitely depends on the library, what your resources are, what staffing capacity you have, what experience you have with child nutrition programs. There's a whole list of things that might interest you in being a sponsor or just being a site. I've also seen, maybe a larger library site or association being the sponsor, and then their smaller libraries being their site, so that they're all under the same umbrella. We can go to the next slide. So I pulled out just a couple, or all the examples of libraries serving summer meals in Illinois. As you can see, the vast majority of them are around Cook County area, and they're all sites, like I mentioned. So Greater Chicago Food Depository has 20 plus different libraries throughout the summer that they serve meals to. I would assume that they deliver the meals daily and then the libraries serve those out. Northern Illinois Food Bank has 10 plus library sites, and Archdiocese of Chicago and Bloomington School District each have one library site. Um, I know when I was managing summer meals at a food bank, we were a larger food bank that had, 30 plus summer sites. And we had usually between 3 and 6 libraries every summer. And the difference with summer meals at a library, like Trina mentioned, is just the natural congregation, the natural feeling of safety that families have. Parents are coming if they're able to with all of their kids. They're enjoying story time, they're playing outside, they're grabbing a meal. Um, and it is just a really natural place for kids to go. Again, depending on your location and what is available in your community. I know the majority of folks here are either in rural areas or represent smaller libraries. So one thing Trina and I can do after this call, or if we have time later on in the call, is we can take, whoever attended today and kind of do a quick little search of what meals are available in your area already. And then if you would qualify for that non-congregate meals to go option, or just the regular congregate or not at all. Like Trina mentioned, there are a couple qualifications, including that free and reduced price percentage for your area. But if you have a school nearby that is, has a high free and reduced price or high need for kids receiving those meals, then your site will likely be covered and you'll have to do very little, information collecting of families. So Trina and I can provide as much support, as little support, answering questions, pulling up addresses and sending you what sites already exist near you. I know we have folks from probably all over the state, so we couldn't prepare that in advance, but can definitely follow up with Kristen afterward. I think those are my 2 slides. Trina, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. So in terms of what next steps would look like, I think the first step would be to determine what you're eligible, if you're interested in participating, determine your eligibility. And so again, that goes back to those mapping tools that Brianna and I have offered to help you with. We'll of course also provide you with those links. I know that Brianna already has put one in the chat box for you. We have all of the information about who the existing SFSP sponsors are across the state. So depending on where you're located, if you're interested in connecting with local sponsors to see if there is a partnership that could be created there, we're more than happy to provide you with contact information for your local SFSP sponsors and your local school food service team if they are also providing summer meals. The application to become a sponsor is available on the ISB website. I will include that in our follow-up to this webinar. New sponsors are due by May 1st, so that's coming up in the not too distant future. However, if you're joining an existing sponsor, they will be able to add new sites to their application into early June. So that gives you a little bit more time if you're more interested in pursuing a partnership versus sponsoring. Of course, we're going to encourage you to connect with us. If you have any questions or any requests for assistance, we have mentors that we can set you up with. We can provide technical assistance as you're completing your application or thinking through your plan as to the best way to go about providing summer meals. I'm also able to continue to connect with Kristen and push out information throughout the summer about things like when sunbucks are eligible or will be dispersed, and information on ways that your library can help ensure that everyone who's eligible for that benefit is aware of it and able to get some assistance in checking to make sure that they're on the list to receive their EBT card. So we'll share our contact information in just a couple slides, but really we just want to partner with you guys and feed some kids this summer. So from there, I think we're going to go into Q&A, and I know we have some. I don't know, Brianna, if you've been able to look through the questions while I've
Yes.
been talking.
Yes, we have a lot of great ones. Top
Okay.
of mind quickly, Toya, I think your note is great and I wanted to uplift it. If all of this seems like a lot and maybe not the best option, and you know that your local school is already serving summer meals, highly encourage you, if you're not already in contact with them, to reach out to them, see if you can help share the information, and then Trina and I can help you decide if that school qualifies for non-congregate or the meals to go, and then we can, in partnership with you, talk to the school directly and see what we can help with possibly changing their model to non-congregate. So we have quite a few questions here. Thank you all for joining and throwing your questions in there. We'll start with Jackie. She said, just a few questions. Can you be reimbursed for staff as well as food costs? Are there nutritional guidelines? How do we know if someone else is doing this within our community? Great question. The reimbursement that Trina just put on the screen shows you what the reimbursement is for the rural areas and other types of sites. This reimbursement technically should support covering the cost of food and partial labor. Obviously, it is not a lot. So the more meals you serve, the more that reimbursement adds up. Summer sites are often easier for schools to do because they're getting similar reimbursements for their breakfast and lunches year round and just serving a lot more meals. But yes, technically that it can go towards supporting staff time. There's no additional funding on top of this reimbursement just for staff. But there, it is rolled into that reimbursement. There are nutritional guidelines which we can share. Those are regulated by the USDA, and Trina has here, you need to serve milk, fruit, vegetable for breakfast, and a grain. And then for lunch, it is the milk, vegetable, fruit, grain, and meats or a meat alternative. And if it's of interest, we can definitely connect folks with some of those existing library sites that are sponsored by those bigger food banks and the Archdiocese in that one school district. If that's of interest and you just want to pick their brain, learn more about what they're doing, we can definitely put you in contact with them. Donna, you looked at the map and you qualify for being a rural area, but not for eligibility. Could you collect information from families if you want to do the meals to go? Yes, if you don't qualify for either within that free and reduced price percentage or the area eligibility, which takes into consideration other percentages of poverty, you can do targeted summer meals to those kids that receive free and reduced price. You would need to work closely with your school district, see if they would be able to share that information and use that as a stepping stone to gather that info. Trina, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, it's called conditional eligibility. And you could, sorry, I was looking, I hope I didn't, I'm not going to repeat you. I was looking through the questions. You can either partner with your local school to utilize the free and reduced price applications that they already have on file. As long as you start the program before July 1, you can use the applications that they collected in the previous year. Otherwise, you can collect eligibility information yourself. If you looked at area eligibility, I will say there are more options than just area eligibility and census data. And I think that map that you have, Brianna, that looks at averaged eligibility, there's like this like little caveat of another way that you can qualify for it. So if you're really interested and if upon first look, it didn't look like you qualified, please connect with Brianna and we can look at the other data sources to see if there might be a way to qualify you under the USDA guidelines as an open site. Otherwise, you can operate as conditional. You just have to collect that eligibility information to ensure or be able to show that every student who's receiving those meals qualifies at 185% or below the poverty level. Did I get that all right, Brianna?
Yes. Um, Jackie, your library qualifies for SNAP programs through your extension because the number of free and reduced price students, but that was not shown on the map. Yeah, there's a couple, there's the free and reduced price percentage, and then like Trina mentioned, there's the area eligibility, which takes into account other components like NCES data. Um, Unfortunately, this is regulated by the USDA, so if there's something that's not qualified based on a different program, that's not something we can control, but we can look up your library's address and see, gather some more information. And I think we mentioned this already, but we can also pull up what existing sponsors are in your area, whether that be a school, a food bank, another community organization, a church, because that might be helpful to see what's already existing in your community and where the gaps might be.
All right, the next question
Um,
is from Toya about the school usually hosts summer food, and that's excellent. I think they are the largest provider of summer meals across the state, so that's going to be really common. Can they offer the sun meals to go instead of congregate meals only? That's going to depend on whether you're considered designated as rural and if you fall into that area eligibility. And I think there's a couple options that I would love to see communities explore as a partnership. One of the things I've noticed when I look at the data is that, and I'm sorry if you can hear a noise behind me, it's thundering here and my dog's trying to make a nest behind my chair. But a lot of times what I see is that schools are not able to serve meals all summer long. The vast majority of Illinois schools serve meals in June because that's when they have their summer camps, their summer school, and then we'll also often see a huge decrease in meal availability in the community for July and August. So that might be a great place, Toya, to check in with your school and see what their plans are. And sometimes there might be a way to work out an arrangement. Maybe they're not going to have anyone on site at the school in July, but if you're able, they might be able to create those meals for you, to make those meals, and you could serve them in July and August at the library. So there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships to make sure that those meals extend for the entire summer for kids. And definitely, we can work with you to see if your schools are in an area that qualifies for non-congregate, and they could then, like I talked about, that hybrid option, right? So serving meals in person when those kids are at school, but then the meals that aren't being served can be sent home. So there are some options that we'd be more than happy to kind of help prep you for conversations with your school district and also be a part of those conversations if they're open to that. All right. Let's see. Jackie is asking, Can you offer one meal a week or modify the amount? You certainly can. When I say up to 10 days, it's up to you to decide what pattern of meals you want to offer. Some places do 5 days of meals at a time. Some do 7 to take advantage, like Brianna mentioned, of that weekend reimbursement. When you're talking about covering like staff costs, sometimes having those extra meals, there's like an economy of scale that can help you make this program work from a financial perspective when you're providing more meals. I also work with school districts that provide, you know, 2 days of meals at a time, or they do lunch on site and send home breakfast for the next day. There's literally an endless iteration, iterations of how you can implement this program so that it works for both you and your staff and your community best. Happy again to discuss those with you.
Angelina, I quickly looked at DuQuoin, Quan, one of those. Um, and that is in Perry County, and there are 3 existing summer sites by the school district as a sponsor. They serve at the high school, they serve at Keys Park, and I believe Keys Park is doing the Meals to Go model, and they are serving at the pool, also doing non-congregate. So that's great. We can maybe after the call I can look up how many meals they served and things like that. And like Trina mentioned, sometimes the schools are serving just a couple weeks out of the summer and there's room to fill that gap, or sometimes they're doing a great job and just could maybe use support with additional outreach. So if you seek sponsors, what kind of money are we looking at? How do we gauge that? Jackie, are you mentioning how are you gauging what the cost would be for you to become a sponsor or a site?
Yes, like if we wanted to do that, like, do you go to like a business or a church, or
Yeah,
how
good
do
question.
who do you ask to be a sponsor, and how do you know how much to ask them for?
Yes. If you want to be a sponsor, I think Trina and I can provide, some one-on-one technical support after this call. There's a lot more involved. You're gonna need to decide how you're going to prepare or purchase those meals. So you could use, a vendor like Trina mentioned. You'll have to come up with your budget, how many kids you're going to serve that summer, what the projected cost would be, obviously allocate how many staff you'll need, and come up with your plan for the summer if that includes, 1 day a week for 6 weeks, 5 days a week for 2 weeks, whatever that breakdown is. And Trina and I can help support that initial like thought process. And then you'll need to connect with ISB, which Trina can, works there. She can help you with that. And they'll help you talk through if your plan is viable, if they have questions, things like that. If you're looking to be a site, we can see who is already providing meals in your area and can connect you and see if they are able to take on another site. That way they already have their meals. They, take on the administrative burden for you becoming a site. Obviously, they'd need to have the capacity, but then your staff would be trained, probably end up being a couple hours training before summer. That sponsor would come visit your site, would, run through a couple checklists, make sure your staff is feeling ready to go, and then they would send you the meals daily, weekly, whatever it ends up being, and then your team would distribute that. So, ping Trina and I after this call, or we can jot down your information and we can set up a call after to see what the better option would be.
Yeah, and I just
Jack,
want to
yeah.
also jump in there if you don't mind and just say, I think sponsor, there's like 2 definitions of sponsor, right? There's the SFSP sponsor, meaning you're filling out the application and being approved by the state to administer the program. And you're going to be the one responsible for figuring out where those meals come from and doing counts and asking for reimbursement. And then, of course, I think there's the way a lot of us use sponsor, which is looking for funding opportunities in our communities to offset the costs that might not be covered by that federal reimbursement. So we're using sponsor in, I think, 2 different ways here. And I just want to make sure that there's not any confusion between being this program sponsor versus potentially going out in your community. If you figure out your budget and say, oh my gosh, we're going to need $5,000 to offset staff costs this summer to administer the program, that's when you might go to your local banks or Rotary Club or who, local business, Chamber of Commerce, and say, hey, is there anyone willing to help us offset these costs so that we can feed our community this summer? And so just wanted to make sure we're like, those are two different things and that we're all clear on that.
And just to add, I know this is a lot of information that we're sharing. For those interested in possibly doing the meals to go component, again, if you qualify as a site in a rural area, No Kid Hungry, we have funding to help support those initial costs, startup costs that might include, maybe I need a full-time or part-time staff member just to do the non-congregate component of that. So again, ping Trina and I, and we can share that grant info with you and talk to you more about it. Jackie, that sounds great. You started serving lunches after your summer reading program last year with the help of local churches and businesses. That is amazing. Like Trina mentioned, it takes a village. So getting the school, the library, the church, other businesses involved, either with volunteer or monetary support, is really wonderful. Jackie, we can connect afterwards, but I'm curious if you all kind of did that out of pocket last year with just donations and things like that, and you're interested to moving towards like this federal reimbursement option, so it's a little more sustainable year over year. Would love to chat with you more, but that's very exciting that you all served lunches last summer. I think we got to all of them, but feel free to throw in the chat or pop off your mute.
Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to talk with us. I noticed there was a question about Ford County. Did you get to that one? I know I talked to someone, I'm not sure,
Maybe
was
not.
that Donna that wrote that? I just talked to Iroquois County and they're looking at how to do it. I know Ford and Iroquois are, I think they're next door to one another. I grew up in Kankakee County. So, it was Deb. So we can look up to see if Paxton qualifies as for rural non-congregate. But there might also be an opportunity. They're trying to figure out how to make that work in their county. And if you guys are close enough, there might be some opportunities for collaboration across the two counties. So definitely reach out if that's of interest, we can connect you.
Jennifer, is Astoria in Fulton County? I'm not from Illinois, so I'm doing my best here. If so, there is one summer site in the whole county by CUSD Fulton County at Cuba Elementary School, and they are doing, I think, just regular congregate meals, but there are a couple pockets that would qualify for that rural area outside of that. So looks like further in like the southwest corner, northwest corner of the county. And then Trina, you said Ford County?
Ford
I
County
missed
was
that
on
in the
there
front.
as well.
Okay, let me look it up
Paxton.
and I'll come back off
Yeah.
mute in a second.
Yeah, and I also want to say, if this seems like a lot to some of you, there are, I know of at least one new sponsor in Illinois this year who is available and offering shelf-stable meals that they can drop ship to your location for however many days you would like to do Sun Meals to go. So if you are interested in essentially kind of being the distribution point and feel like you have the capacity to hold like that regular distribution, whether it's every 5 days, weekly, whatever you decide on, please reach out, because I can put you in touch with an organization that's applied to be a sponsor in our state that could work with you. They're shelf-stable meals that meet those meal pattern requirements. So if that appeals to you, Brianna and I are both happy to like help make connections to different groups that might be able to make this easier for you.
So you've given us a lot of information. I was trying to write it all down. I know it's going to be recorded. But I think, well, I'd speak for myself. The meals to go sounds like the best option, just because, I don't have a kitchen to prepare meals, or, obviously I could go out and find somebody to help prepare meals, etc. I think I looked myself up. I'm in Piatt County. I looked myself up. We're rural. It looks like we're eligible, but I couldn't figure out the free reduced lunch portion. Like I couldn't figure out which website I'm going to check that.
Sherry,
Is
were
that-
you using the USDA map or the No Kid
Yeah.
Hungry map?
I used the USDA map, the rural designation map. So I looked up property eligibility. And I found myself on there that says I was in an eligible area.
Oh, good. If you want to pop your address or county in the chat, I can look it up on our map. Our map overlays the rural eligibility with the eligibility of free and reduced price or the other data that they approve, and it overlays both of them.
Okay.
So I can look that up.
Because I know that. I mean, I know that some of the kids here get free reduced lunch because those kids are also eligible for a free library card if they live outside of our taxing district. And so I send those families a letter every year, you know, inviting them to come and get a library card. They don't have to pay for it. So in my humble opinion, there's just not very many. So that's why I was like, oh, trying to figure out that poverty level thing.
Yeah,
Again, when
absolutely.
I looked it up too, and you're going to do better than me, I didn't even see a site near me.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, these are federal programs, so layers and layers above all of us. But I will say it is tricky because every community or majority of communities have pockets of extreme poverty, f groups of families that are extremely high need. But when you compare that data at, kind of pull out at a larger lens, it might be 20% free and reduced price. So the
Okay.
families are missing out on some of these meals just because the vast majority of the community doesn't utilize those meals. So it can be tricky, and that's what Trina mentioned. Sometimes school districts or sponsors will target those families in particular. It is an added layer for sure. But you all and the schools know your communities best, and you know when there are families that are just struggling, and as a masses, you might not qualify for some meals, but those families do. So I will look up your address and pop it in the chat or come off mute in a couple minutes.
Okay. And then I guess the thing that so I'm not sure if this was when Trina was talking about the Sun Meals to Go, and you were talking about like if you had like a library program. So again, I don't think I'd ever want to be a sponsor. I already have too much on my plate. But for some reason, the Meals to Go just sounded interesting. And I thought something that a lot of people could make doable, or I was thinking I shouldn't say that. I should just talk for myself, that it would be a doable type of thing for a library, especially if you're in a rural area. You're not talking, 1,000 meals to go or 500 meals to go. You might be talking, I don't know, 50, 75. But going back to that, like having like, because we have summer programs, for 2 months in the summertime. But then I thought she had said that any kid who comes to the library for that summer program would be eligible. Did I misunderstand you, Trina?
So if you operate as an open site,
Yes.
you can provide those meals to the kids who are in your program, but you would also have to be willing to provide them to walk-in children during those same hours who aren't participating in your program. So it would be open to any child through the age of 18. So
Okay.
you just have to be willing to, in that instance, I was talking about like doing a hybrid, right? Where they show up for a program and also take meals home.
Yeah.
You could have kids who show up and say, "Hey, can I have lunch today?" And even if they're not in the meal, you'd want to have like a designated location where they could eat their lunch if they didn't want to participate in programming. Or they might just show up and be like, "Can I have the meals to go for this week?" In which
Yeah.
case you'd give them the meals that are set up. And I just want to point out to you, if you have 50 kids a week and say you did 7 days of meals at a time, and that's 7 days of meals is 14 meals per child times 50 kids. That's 700 meals that you would be giving away a
Wow.
week. So, and again, it's up to you how many days you would do at a time or offer per week, but it can end up being a larger number than people think about, just with the sheer number of meals that Sun Meals to Go allows you to send home for children at one time.
Mm.
And then if you're, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had a question kind of along the same lines. Let's say you have very limited resources, like limited staff, limited space, limited for refrigeration, limited seating, all of it. What are your least what are your lowest barrier against?
I would say shelf-stable Sun Meals to go that are dropped to you once a week are going to be your easiest option. So these wouldn't require refrigeration. They come, they're like vended meals, so they already come packaged with all the components that are required for a reimbursable meal. Sometimes they're boxed by number of days, and then you could just set up a weekly drive-through or whatever where families come through and you are giving out those meals. So I always think shelf stable is the easy button. And there are companies that specifically make reimbursable shelf stable meals to make sure that in those areas where there are going to be barriers to any other option, that we are getting those options out to kids' households.
I'm gonna very quickly share my screen to show you all the map. Just if you want to use it, if you're curious. We have a couple maps. This one I would say is the most user friendly because it shows you where all these schools are, and then it shows you where the summer meal sites were last summer. And again, typically where the schools are, where the kids are, a lot of times. So this is the map. I put it in the chat and we can send it as a resource afterward. You're going to want to filter on the right side your state, and then the map will refresh. I like to show the county lines. And then here's where you can see, you can choose if you just want to see if it qualifies as rural, which most of Piatt County does. You can see which areas qualify as area eligible. So again, with those percentages of high need kids, which is really just this pocket down here. And then you can see them overlaid on top of each other, which areas are rural and area eligible, which in Piatt County is just this pocket down here, just south of Bement High School. I'll zoom out just a tiny bit and you can see there's not a single, the orange dots are the summer sites, as you can see here on the right. There's not a single summer site in Piatt County. Whereas if you go to the right, there's a handful in Champaign County. If you go to the left, there are some. And obviously every county, every community is different. Some communities have way less people, so it just is not feasible. But this is an easy way to see what's going on in your county. This map in particular, we're just doing at a county level. We weren't able to overlay addresses in here as well, because then it just got way too muddy to look for a specific address and have the meal sites and have the school data. But you can, at a glance, see roughly where you are in comparison to some of these schools and see if that would qualify. But again, the area eligibility is just to qualify for summer food service program or Sun Meals. And then the rural and area eligibility would be which areas would qualify for the Sun Meals to go. So sometimes, again, if we're thinking like at a sponsor level, let's say this high school does not qualify, but let's say there's a library in this green pocket that qualifies. Maybe the high school will choose to do meals at that library so that they technically can do those Sun Meals to go. There's a lot of info. Trina and I can spend one-on-one time with you all and dig into your specific county, your area, what's going on, what would be feasible for you all, answer questions. That might be just a little easier after this call.
Thank you for that map. That was very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I'll put it in the chat again.
So you have to do the Sun Meals to go, you have to be as a library in that area? Is that what you're kind of saying? So that little pocket in Piatt County that was by the high school, or you just have to be a library? Because there is a library down in Bement. I mean, they're a small rural library. And I don't think Donna's on the call today. She's the director down there. But does she have to be in that pocket or just be near that pocket?
She would have to be in that pocket to
Gotcha.
qualify as like, just in general, the community could come, and then she wouldn't have to keep tabs of every single family. There are,
Yes,
like Trina mentioned, that the sites where they're just choosing a handful of families that qualify because their site doesn't qualify.
Yes.
But
okay.
It's not, if that library is in an eligible area, it doesn't mean that folks outside of the area couldn't come. We're obviously not, telling everyone that, but it's not just for that little tiny area. We have some places in Illinois, like Mount Vernon School District, for example, they are one of the only schools or summer sites in their area. So they are now growing to communities around them that because there's no meals being served. And they had families driving 45 minutes last summer because there's nothing around them. So they're looking at options to grow around them. So really, kind of depends there. Kristen, yes, I had endless tabs open. I really should go through them. And then Villa Grove, I will look that up, Jackie. I'm assuming Douglas is the county, but I will look.
And I put it in the comments. Excuse me, I know we're at time, but I was so excited. I don't know if you saw it, Brianna, but Donna was asking about Woodford County. And we
Okay.
are going to be presenting on Monday at the extension office in Peoria County, but they're trying to bring together people from the Tri-County area to come up with like a comprehensive plan for providing summer meals this summer. So happy to share that information if you'd like to make a little drive over to Peoria and join us on Monday. You'll get to hear some of this information again. And I know we're at 3:00, Kristen, so this has been such an exciting conversation. And I'm just thankful that you were able to set this up so that we could share this information.
Oh, thank you so much. Those statistics that you gave in the early, it gave me chills to think about, just the numbers was just really amazing. So I just really appreciate not only you sharing the information with us, but all that you do to provide these programs. They are really essential. So I hope our group that was here today will follow up. I will send an email to everybody with the link to this recording as well as your contact information, and they can follow up with you directly if they have other questions.
And this is literally what Brianna and I do. So you are not, it's not an imposition at all for you to reach out and ask us to map your county or make connections for you. We kind of exist. Brianna's in the nonprofit world. I'm embedded now at the State Board of Education, specifically because we know there is a gap that we need to fill. And so we're also doing this with park districts and other groups that just have anchor institutions that can help us, build a stronger network of nutrition for kids in the summer. So please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, both of you. Thank you, everyone, and stop by the Small and Rural Library Forum website and jump into our Google group and Facebook page. Bye, all.